Good day to you. This is Galactic, the 23rd day of July. We are in a series, and if you're tuning in for the first time, boy, are you in luck. This is the cutting edge of science at all levels, at all scales, for the most important questions human beings have ever asked. Yesterday, I began to show you the formal paper that I'm writing now. It just began yesterday, and you will be accompanying me in the production of this formal paper. Now, what you see on the screen here that I'm scrolling through is, first of all, this is interactive for me, so I'm just going to type in the date. It's actually the 23rd. You may have seen back up here it said the 22nd. That's because this is a list called a chapterization that I inserted in yesterday's video because it gets a lot of attention.
Young men and women today, right now, as I speak, and around the clock all over the world,
are looking for entertainment on YouTube. It's not the only platform, as I'm sure you're aware, but it is extremely famous, and that's why I'm on YouTube, is to get some attention. Now, 99% of the time that means money, moolah, Bitcoin, Patreon, give me money, beg
for money.
That's not science, and anybody who does that is not a scientist. And that's a very hard and fast rule. I give secrets of the universe at all levels. Go way beyond philosophy and religion into the spookiest shit you could even imagine. So if you're looking for entertainment, there's nowhere else to turn except to me. Which brings up my topic today. I slept on this. Yesterday was a kickoff. It was a premiere. So let's make sure we know with whom we're dealing. You with me, and I with you. Whoever you are, you need to know our relationship because I am going to define it for you. So you know what it is. There cannot be any confusion in this process that I'm undertaking now. Which, let me remind you, if you are tuning in for the first time or you've forgotten since yesterday, this is a major discovery in science in the field of geometry that must be known now. It doesn't make any difference what science likes or dislikes. The way science is done is the way I'm doing it. And now I have to fit. And that's not happening. That's got to change. Now it's got to change. And you are going to make that happen. Whoever you are that's listening right now, and you tell people to watch this, because this has to go memic. This has to spread. This is a groundswell, a grassroots beginning of real science, which is holy. It's sacred. It's exactly what a full-grown man must be doing, or you are not part of the solution. This is real time, kids. We're going in. So I'm the leader because I've got the answers. In science, it's ruthless. There's no room for your identity. You have to treat this absolutely objectively. It makes no difference if I'm wearing dark shades like fucking Morpheus talking to Neo. It's very similar to the Matrix, though. And I will be using a lot of posturing. I'm extremely pretentious. I can be overbearing. I can be acerbic. I can be deadly. I do not wish to do that because that's not science. But here's the lowdown. Here's where the rubber meets the road. Okay, when you take that used rubber and you roll down the window, actually you don't roll it down anymore, I'm from the Cenozoic era, you electrify your window down and you throw the used rubber out the window where it hits the road. That's the meaning of where the rubber meets the road. I'm sure there's a moral in there somewhere, but let's not go there. All right, so this is not actually the 22nd of July, as you'll see on the rolling screen here. And this is not a complete chapterization Let me just show you something here for your dancing and dining pleasure. Over here to our left, you will see a list of items, which I'm sure you can't read, but I'll be expanding that in a moment. It is called a chapterization list, and it's part of the description of my video that I released yesterday. A chapterization is a very good addition to a published video on YouTube because it gives a timeline with timestamps. While the person is watching the video, they can use their mouse and find out the chapters. It's like having a table of contents to a book, and it's dynamic, it's interactive. So that's what I composed yesterday, just before falling asleep in absolute exhaustion. So the reason for putting this up on the screen is that we're going to go through these items rather quickly so that you'll have a very quick overview of what was discussed yesterday. In the premiere to this series, which will be running perhaps for 4 years, I intend for it to be done by Christmas, but I've lied about that in 2 years in a row. This time of year, I predict I'll have my paper out by Christmas, and I just can't do it. So I'm going to force it out now. There were some hitches, and I covered that in the prior video. I wasn't aware that I am forced to publish independently. There are no outlet publishers for this kind of work. And there are reasons for that, and some of them are natural, and some of them are just unfortunate. But it is just part of life that you have to deal with what's given to you. You have to play the cards that are dealt to you, and I got some pretty interesting cards, but they're not all aces, okay? That's not true for anybody, but you try to do the best with the resources that you have. That's called being a man. You just have to grow up sometime, and we're always growing up. We never fully become men, because what would that even be? You would be using 100% of your brain. You know, you'd be absolutely altruistic, beneficent. You'd be holy. You'd be blessing everybody. If everybody were like that, there wouldn't be any problems. We'd be done with science. We would be finally human. Well, a long way to go there, and the evolutionists are totally in tune with that, obviously the human race is still speciating. It was just yesterday we emerged from the trees of Africa and the African savanna with clubs, bam, 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 bam. This is how I was raised. With dinosaurs, you have a pet dinosaur. That was yesterday. Just yesterday we were walking around with dinosaurs. That's been proved. Has it? You may or may not know that, or you may, whoa, really? What do we have, footprints of humans next to dinosaurs? Depends on whom you believe. Depends on the level of research that you're consulting. Perhaps you yourself went to Wyoming or Montana or somewhere in the world, perhaps Africa, perhaps Asia, and you got your face right to the rock and dirt and whatever the fuck else is there that tells you that's a goddamned dinosaur footprint, and right next to it, or even overlapping with it, is a humanoid footprint. And after 65 fucking million years, you would expect that maybe those footprints are not that easy to tell what the fuck made that footprint. So you have to believe your motherfucking scientists. Because you're not going to go look. You can look at the photos. They can doctor those photos. They'll just tell you what you're looking at, but if you looked at it yourself, you would not see what they see. Oh, that's been done a lot. A lot in my lifetime. Very famous. Lucy. Maybe you've heard of the missing link between apes and humans. Lucy. Holy shit. So this goes to espionage. It goes to Sherlock Holmes detective stories. You have to use forensics. You have to learn to think fast. You have to become dangerous because your enemy is dangerous. Liars. absolute fucking filthy, unashamed liars. It's not just in the church. It's not just the goddamned Christians who do that. Just lie in any way they can get money out of your fucking ass. And that's everybody except me. That's everybody except me. I'm the only scientist, and I'm the only priest, I'm the only authority, and so are you, Daddy-O. And you have got to grow a pair. You've got to grow up. You cannot make mistakes when you're a scientist. Although you will. And you'll make more mistakes than anyone else is even capable of making. And you'll make the worst mistakes. And you will then, perhaps if you're religiously bent, which you will be, or you will not grow a pair, you will not pass go, you will not collect $200 or whatever it is in Monopoly, you're not going to win because you're not even going to qualify unless you become more religious than any other human being has ever been. That's you have to do that. And then you're going to make even bigger and worse mistakes. You'll end up going through the phase that I either am in or have suffered mightily being in, megalomania. So what we're going to do today is go through this list of my discoveries based on a new geometry. The most pretentious, outrageous, outlandish. Fuck Gurdjieff. Fuck the people of India. Fuck the mesmerists. Fuck the Masons and Illuminati. You're a baby. You're a child. You don't know what you're talking about at all. You're just going goo, 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 goo and sticking your hand down your fucking pants. You have to go through the entire cycle. In order to be the leader, which you have to become, you at least have to be able to lead yourself. You can't even do that. You don't even know who you are, except what you've been told by these lying maniacs. Either you're a son of God and you're going to be just like Jesus or Buddha, and you're just going to turn into a spirit or ghost or gas, or you're going to, or then you listen to the scientists. Oh no, we're going to the stars to meet the aliens, and then we'll all have a happy galaxy together after we've blown the shit out of the evil aliens who are constantly trying to pork us. And you got, that's your choice. That's your only choice. It's either Neil deGrasse Tyson or Joseph Smith. It's either the Pope or Brian Greene. You're either going to listen to the white supremacists or you're going to listen to the religious white supremacists. And those are your only two choices for orientation in this world. And the whole time, from before puberty, starting even before puberty, everything is money. Everything is money. That's survival of the fittest. That's natural selection. You either learn the calculus or you start flipping hamburgers, you fucking nigger. You white. I always am referring to white people. There are black white people. I'm sure you've seen them. Their skin is black. So the fuck what? See, I was raised by idiots. Really, is there racial tension? Well, how come you haven't fixed that, you stupid free nation? Money. You have to have money. Well, to get money, if you have a brain in your head, you have calculus. That's how you get money. Calculus. It's calculus. You have to know calculus to make money. That's the only way to make money, unless you're a thief. Go into politics or used car sales. or open a business. You're a robber. And your whole life will be dominated with money. And that's all you'll ever be, is a coin or a torn fucking dollar. There's actually a parable about this. The lost coin that Jesus looks for under the pews. That's you poor suffering little penny. You're just totally forgotten. Everyone else has run off with the cash, but you're lost, and Jesus is looking for you. He doesn't care a fuck about those who made money. He's looking for you. That is, they became part of the money system. But you're this little hopeless penny, and you're stuck. You're under the pew, which is well named because that's where these assholes plant their assholes. And you're even lower than that. Do you think I'm describing myself? I'm describing you too, baby cakes. That's how you are. You're a baby. And Jesus is looking for you. Well, maybe you don't believe in Jesus because maybe you never even heard of Jesus. They're liars, okay? They're lying to you. There is such a person, and there is such a prophet, and there is such a holy man, and there is such a son of God. And yes, he's the king of the earth, and he's coming back soon. But I don't expect you to believe that. You can't even tie your own fucking shoelaces. You don't know who you are. You don't know where you are. You have no idea what's happening to you. And I come along, believe in Jesus. You don't have the capacity to believe in anything. You're an idiot, is what you are. And so was I. It's hard to shake that off completely. We're always beginners. To the day each one of us just breathes our last breath and gives up the ghost, or however you want to say it superstitiously, your consciousness terminates in this body, is how maybe a hard scientist would say it. Your room temperature. As for you, whatever you had been, soul, spirit, mind, personality, identity, with or without a dick, with or without the conjugate of the dick, with or without an asshole, with or without eyeballs or brain, whatever you had been, it's no more, as Monty Python would say. This parrot is no more. That's you. Very, very soon. It could be 50 years from now. That's very, very soon. Well, you're going to need money every single hour of every single day. The moment that money supply is interrupted, you're dead. You'll become a hobo, or what I prefer to say after careful consideration, a non-landed gentryman. You don't have land. You're not a real person. You're a hobo. Not a homeless person. That is so cruel. You know, in this age where you're not allowed to say words like nigger, Jew, retard, oh my God! Kill him! But you say homeless person. Homeless person. You know what you're saying? You're saying the N-word. I mean verbatim, instead of saying N-I-G-G-E-R, which I really don't like to say. It is a sickening word. But it's just a word. Well, so is homeless. Homeless? You're defining the person according to what they don't have. That's defining a human. There's a lot of problems with money in this world. It's what drives politicians. It's what drives the Epstein files. The reason those bastards, Jew or Gentile, black or white, Jew or Gentile, black or white, you need money to get your perversions fulfilled. That's why men become mafiosi, which is all politics is. You're joining the mafia. A government is a mafia. And the reason you want to become a bigwig is because the law that keeps the slaves in line to bring you your whores and booze protects you from them. It protects you from the mob. And so this huge, well, not really huge, but disproportionately large cadre of European Jews lives, from what I don't know Manhattan that well, but that's where they all are. Trillions of dollars of Jew money is in Manhattan, running the entire world. You know, when I was growing up, that was crazy talk. Now I hear it every day on the most objective talk show programs, such as Glenn Deason. I strongly recommend you listen to Glenn Deason. He's from Norway. He's a diplomat. He's a scholar. He's the best. And he gets on top CIA officials, top U.S. and Iranian and Russian. He doesn't get on any Israelis. Nobody wants the fuck anything to do with the goddamned Israelis. And by the way, those are not Jews. And when I said there's a bunch of Jew money in Manhattan, I couldn't say that 50 years ago. I could not say it. You can't say that. You can now. Everybody says it. They're called the Zionist lobby. Well, these are actual human beings. Although you're not going to see them very often because they're up in their penthouses generating more Epstein files. These are not orthodox people from any religion, baby cakes. And it's ridiculous to say, first of all, that any of them are Jews. There's no such thing as a Jew. They're not Jews. They're Europeans of a very, very strange strain, which Adolf Hitler was fully aware of. You're not. But if you listen to the Glenn Deason show, you'll find out what these so-called Zionists are. They're white supremacists. And that's all they are. That's why they're genocidally killing the brownies. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard the term brownies, because I just made it up. Nobody's ever said that. I just said it for the first time. There are the blackies, or the blacks, a totally unscientific, actually retarded, inhumanitarian word. A black person? You're out of your fucking mind. A white person? You're crazy. To even think that way. To use that word, you're a retard, and you cannot sit at my table. You are not welcome to look at me, or my daughters, or my women. You keep your black, white ass away from real people. That's how I actually feel now, because I woke up from the Matrix. You can't. And you never will, and I know that. However, I am not the final authority, and you better thank your fucking lucky stars I'm not. And here's the lowdown. Here's what I wanted to say. I'm going to close this off in a half an hour. This is my rant. I always allot myself a half an hour rant in order to drain off the venom, so that in the following video, which will be in about 2 to 3 hours after I've calmed down, I will be teaching you cutting-edge science again. But I don't want to. I don't want to do this. I do not want to divulge these secrets any further. It's not going to go anywhere. This is going to be a failure. So you might ask, well, why don't I just do something else or try something else? I can't. I'm a real man. I have to do what I'm told. You don't. You're free. Yeah, you're free, all right. I'm not. I'm a slave. You're free. I'm trying to enslave you. Well, you might not like that. No, you don't. Because you're not a believer in happiness. You're not a believer in hope, faith, love, kindness, intelligence. You're a goner. But you're going to be free until you're dead. I will never be free again for all eternity. I have been captured by the side of life that you hate, that you will always hate, and you will end up hating me as well. You can't help it because you're retarded. You're a retarded nigger. You're a retarded nigger Jew. And you're a retarded nigger Jew faggot. And that's all you will ever be to me because you cannot change. Neither can I. And there will be an abyss between us from now to eternity that you cannot cross. I could always cross back to your side and become the filth that you're going to remain until your pathetic life is over. I have no such freedom. And that's a half an hour. So instead of going through this list, which let me just read it really quickly. Penrose, Kastrup, Megalomania, New Geometry, Rationale, Millions, Stanford, Einstein Field Equation, Einstein Energy Equation, Dirac Logic, Archive, which is a publishing house, Euclid, Intrinsic. These are timestamps for my video yesterday. You have got to go to the radio stations and your professors at your local universities and tell them Scott Allen Miller needs to be interviewed now! The complex numbers and quantum dynamics, synthesis, the Einstein energy equation demonstration, infinity proportion 1, conjugation 1 proportion infinity. That's the rationalization of infinity, by the way. Jaimungal and Einstein. Many worlds idealism, that's the universe splits. The paradox system of quantum mechanics and the solution strategy that works. Google Sites. Planar geometry. The plane. Drive-in realism, referring to the former drive-in theater system of America, which Joe Bob Briggs, bless his soul, peace be upon that Texan-sounding man forever, he used to have a syndicated column in the Sacramento Bee, which I read as soon as I found out about this genius. He had the drive-in movie review. All of that's something of the past. Really, we're back to the Cold War and World War II and cavemen. So then we have Kastrup again, hypervolume, the point, circle, the Archimedean, which I invented, that term, the 4 types of lines called the family of curves. I'm going to scroll up here just a little. The infinite eccentricity of the straight line, the quantum metric, which I discovered, the hypersphere, which I discovered, LaTeX, which is a typesetting system, Inception raised to the power. Inception. By the way, that's a movie, Inception. Very well done. It has a hyperdreidel. And then there's you, all caps. And that's how the 58-minute video closes. With you. It's your turn now. I'm done. I will continue to produce this series, but I've already decided I'm going to withhold a lot of critical information. I'm not going to divulge everything that I know. I'm going to sell it. Because that's the only way that Americans will take something like this seriously. Because you're so far gone. With these crapheads. My favorite poster boy for the really sickos, the ones that have the baby faces like Sean Carroll. Sean Carroll, the string theorist. Oh boy. Oh, he's so Jim Dandy. He's a little faggot, okay? But it's really Brian Greene. And you can check in Wikipedia to see if Brian Greene is a member of some tribe. Oh, yes, he is. And he is one of the biggest actors on the stage of YouTube right now. He's getting old. He's starting to turn gray. But God, did he have a run. Another string theorist. Oh yeah, they all say we're from monkeys, but these guys at the very top, the universe is expanding. Well, the train is arriving, and that's a half an hour. I'm not going to tell you the secrets of the universe. I'm going to tell you some of it, but not the stuff that you would like to know, because you would not like to know it, because you're too stupid. So you're going to have to pay me, or you're not going to get anything. That's the way it's going to be from now on. I'm done with my rant. I'm not sure that I meant everything that I said, because I am under orders from heaven. And if you don't like that, you can shove it up your ass and then kiss yourself goodbye. I am under orders from heaven. You're not. You're under orders from Satan is what you are, and I can see right through you. Well, you know I can do no such thing. So that's the megalomania. I bled it off. As Robinson Jeffers said, the poet laureate of North America is Robinson Jeffers. He said, I have made... then he had some poetical word. I have made images so that the demons would chase the images. They have chased the images and missed my house. That's what I'm doing. I want nothing to do with you. I have made it. I don't need you. But I'm under orders to try to help you. May God have mercy on our souls, and I mean that sincerely. In the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate, help us to understand you and your plan, so that we can really go free and be happy. Thank you. I'll be right back in a little while after I've had some fluids and some food and just a little bit of meditative time. I'm completing my reading of the Quran, which has taken a year, and so I'm the happiest man in the world. But at this moment, you may not think so. That's because I'm under such incredible stress, and you will never understand that stress, and I hope you never encounter such stress. But it's with me every second of every day, and it's killing me. So that's your guide, that's your great leader, the one who's going to renovate science and lead humanity into a new age of enlightenment. Yeah, there's one little problem. You are the problem. Get with it. I'll be right back. Thank you very much. Good day to you. This is Anagalactic on the 24th day of July 2026. Up here you'll see the family of lines. There are 4 lines that can be drawn on a plane, and you see all 4 of them there. This was studied by Johannes Kepler, and then by Sir Isaac Newton, and then by Ruđer Bošković, who all drew something essentially similar to this. In the case of Kepler, he was studying the orbits of planets. And you can see that figured here. We'll just expand this a little bit so you can look at that more clearly. One of those lines is completely open. That's the one at the bottom. You'll see they're each given a designator called E, which stands for eccentricity, where you probably could figure out, if you were asked to give some idea of a curvature metric, that the straight line would have 0 curvature. But if you're doing something slightly different, which is indicated with the formula at the bottom, unless you're vastly interested in that, I don't suggest trying to figure it out unless you're really clever. I stared at that for a while. The absolute value of FP, which is a dotted line, is equal to the eccentricity times the absolute value of P to P stroke. So those 2 dotted lines have a specific relationship where eccentricity is one of the factors. But it's essentially the opposite of curvature in some way, because the straight line, instead of having 0 curvature, has eccentricity of infinity. Infinity is such an interesting concept. It's not a value. It's not a quantity, but it is a number. Now, in that case, you have to define what you mean by number, because numbers are quantities, but infinity is not. And that is one way of stating it. That could be argued, by the way. I could easily get myself entrapped into a debate with a real mathematician who would just erase everything I just said and either laughingly or condescendingly or both instruct me in what's actually the case with numbers. Well, I'm not a mathematician, so I would be crushed in that debate. But since there's nobody overseeing me right now, I'll just continue gallivanting on my own independent way, just saying whatever I want, whether it can be proved or not. And that's actually how the debate would end up, with me crushing the mathematician if he dared to defy me. Because I do know what I'm talking about. How do I know that I know what I'm talking about? It's called a proof. In science, it's just brutal. It really is the survival of the fittest, and there's only one way to come out the dominant alpha anything. You have to prove every single thing you say. Prove it. There are two pitfalls in stating the matter that way. It is true, but truth is such an elusive concept. If you're being strict, it certainly is. In the philosophy room, oh well, drink your cocktails, get hopped up on tea and coffee, smoke something, tobacco, marijuana, just pop some pills, just kick your feet up, and let your fantasy world just fly free. That is not science. Science is exactly the opposite. It's out on the street, you either kill your opponent or your opponent is going to kill you. No prisoners, death. You either can prove what you say or you're out. That doesn't actually work for two reasons. One is, there has to be somebody who decides that your proof works. And who's that authority? Well, of course, it's going to be another mathematician or scientist who just puts his arm around his buddy and says, yeah, he did prove it. And you little pipsqueak. You notice perhaps an attitude on my part? Yes, I'm trying to be published. So this is our continuing series on my documentation of the entire publication process. And essentially, this is the first video after the introductory video day before yesterday. I took yesterday off to drink a lot of beer, which I thrive on, although it's just draining my bank account and probably my health. But it's a 50-year-old habit that I just can't seem to shake. And so every now and then I just get loaded on beer, which is what I did yesterday, which is why I never produced a video. So there's your professor. He's got an attitude, he's got a habit, but does he have anything worth saying about science? Well, yeah, look at those lines there. So what does that mean? Well, that's the family of lines, and I think it's a remarkable fact that I'm sharing with you that there are only 4 lines in the whole universe. And they're quite instructive. Now, the straight line has an eccentricity of infinity. Essentially what that means is the correlating factor between that little dotted line and the longer vertical dotted line, that relationship goes to infinity. What's moving? There are several ways to evolute this sequence. And Kepler did it one way, Newton did it a slightly different way, and Boschkovich did it a slightly different way. But what is so famous about these lines here is that they're all conic sections. And you've certainly seen this in school, although you've probably mercifully forgotten it. Stuff is really weird. A cone is a strange object which has a vertex, and then it opens up as a circle that's expanding, but it's also moving linearly. So the circle goes up and it expands, and that's called the light cone, which is a cone. And if you take sections, that is, you slice the cone in any one of a number of ways, you get these lines. And these are the only lines you can get. These are, of course, planar figures, whereas a cone is a volume figure. So this is a projection downward of a conic section. So the simplest of the conic sections, you could say, is a straight line. Well, it has an eccentricity of infinity. Now, I'm not going to go into the mathematics of how that is produced, but it is infinity, and that it figures into the computation of eccentricity. So why is this significant? First of all, you'll see that there's closure. What's happening is, the way I envision it, and I hope this meets what you're capable of envisioning too, because there's lots of ways to envision what's going on here. This does represent a transformation. If you take the straight line and you start to bend it up, it enters instantly into the family of hyperbole, which is that blue line is a member of that family. So everything between the black line and the green line is the family of hyperbole. So if you lift the ends of the line, which are at polar infinities, and just grab those right at infinity, just to use your pinchers here, and just reach out here and take the infinite edge, or the infinitely remote point, and grab it. Nothing could be simpler. You're just handling infinity with these pinchers. You take your other pinchers, and you go to the other infinity, at the other end of the endless universe, and then you grab them both, because you're greater than any, angel, and then you just lift the edges while the center remains stationary. And that's called the quantum jump. That takes an infinite amount of energy to get nowhere at all. So you have zero and infinity computed together to do this impossible act. And that's how I envision it. I hope that helps you. So you grab the two infinities, and with an infinite amount of force, you lift it an infinitesimal quantity off of parallelity. So now you've left Euclidean space and you've entered the wild, wonderful world of curvature, which is what I study. And that's all I study, is curvature, because it's so enlightening to do so. And this is a major discovery that transforms science from the inside out. I insist on that. That's why I'm writing this paper, which you are participating in at this very moment. It should be out by Christmas, but I've promised that 2 years in a row, and I've met various hurdles. One of the problems for me in producing a paper is it takes too much damn time. I am having so much fun discovering new things every day. My little world has expanded beyond the infinite. I literally dream at night about curvature space, imaginary space that I can go in and out of anytime I want. I can perform miracles with my mind. And I think you understand why it's important for me to have beer sometimes. Because I also would like to remain human while I'm in this body. And you can lose your mind by concentrating too much on infinity. Some people go off into infinity and they just fucking don't come back, honey. Or they do, but their eyes are blank. They can no longer feed themselves or hold a spoon. because their mind, they left it behind way out there at the edge of the universe. Well, I just go there all the time. So I have to be cautious that I am able to come back to talk to you. Because I love you. I'm an altruistic scientist who's trying to help the children and all future generations. By the way, I need money, so be sure to send me some. Yeah, just like religion. I don't deal with money, but I probably should because it runs low at the end of each month, and it is the end of the month, and I am low on money once again, as I always am. So I'm not going to ask you for money, but I may soon. All right, so if you lift the two edges of infinity, an infinitesimal amount, requiring an infinite amount of force to do so, you get your smallest hyperbola. Smallest? Well, it would have an eccentricity of just slightly less than infinity. Just an eensy-weensy bit less than infinite straightness. It's now not straight. So it's some number less than infinity, which brings it back into the world of numbers. But which number? Well, the highest number of all, just before infinity. So infinity is a very strange concept, partially for that reason, is when you say that infinity is out there, well, is there anything just short of infinity? Yes. The hyperbola that is not straight. The very tiniest difference between a straight line and the universe's smallest curvature hyperbola is that hyperbola we just made. Well, that jump that you made to get off of the perfection of infinity, actually infinite eccentricity, when you pump up the edges to make that really, really obtuse, almost straight, but not quite straight, that's called the quantum jump. And it's one of many. Actually, you could say it's one of, I'm not sure there's an infinite number of quantum jump types, but there are a lot of different quantum jumps, essentially because they're everywhere. Everything is a quantum jump. Everything is. Nothing is smooth or continuous in the quantum universe. It goes by steps. And each step is a quantum leap, a quantum jump. It's through nothingness, because it takes no time. That's the infinitesimal motion that takes no time. No time at all to change. Instantaneous change. Einstein didn't like that. Well, he had every reason not to like it, because he had just got done saying, and this is practically simultaneous discoveries, is the discovery by Einstein that light speed cannot be exceeded, right? Light speed cannot be exceeded. It's called the speed law of the universe. Well, it's a very interesting thing to say. So there is an absolute aspect to motion, because speed has to do with motion, right? So the speed of light is its motion through space. It has a fixed speed, according to Einstein, which he was well able to prove, although everyone knows that that's impossible, that you can't say that. It really baffled the you-know-what out of the mathematicians who first encountered Albert Einstein's publication of his discovery of general relativity. Special relativity was already quite difficult to envision, kind of like what we're doing here, All of this is related because you're talking about infinity. Well, actually, what you're talking about is continuity. Continuity. And continuity means that there's no such thing as a quantum jump. And the whole idea of the quantum jump, or the quantization of energy, which is what the quantum refers to, it's the quantization of energy. Well, you can't do that. It just can't be done, because it takes an infinite amount of energy to quantize energy. It can't be quantized because it's non-quantizable, because it's continuous, because it's motion. It doesn't have a position. It doesn't have a position. Light does not have a position. It only has motion. Energy is like that. And that's the entire universe, is pure continuity. No steps anywhere. There are no gaps in the universe. So what is it that we're studying at the quantum level? That's a very difficult question to answer, and it kind of drives men out of their minds. And I found out why, which is why I drink a lot of beer, although that's not really the reason. I would drink a lot of beer anyway, but now I'm dependent on it. Otherwise, I'll just drift away and not come back. I'm not sure how true these things are that I'm saying. I'm saying them in jest, but there's an element of seriousness here because of my discovery. So let me explain to you what my discovery is that makes it so exciting. What everybody is looking at in entanglement, which I hope you know what that is. I will be explaining it in a moment, but I'm just throwing that word out there as if you know exactly what... Well, nobody knows exactly what that is, but it can be described. So let me just describe it. You may have heard this before, but I may describe it in a slightly different way than you've heard. You have two... They're called particles, and they have to be because they have some kind of position. Now, normally these are electrons. The strangest goddamned particle in the universe is the electron. Although it's a pretty close tie with the photon, and this experiment has also been done with photons. Now, what do they have in common? They're quanta of energy. And the reason they're called quanta is because they have some kind of independent nature, which we say is position. Position. So an electron is a thing. But that's about the most you can say about the goddamn thing. They can be fired from guns. An electron gun can release electrons, and you've heard of the double slit experiment. Those are electrons being sent through the double slit in some sense. Although it's quite paradoxical, what they do is they go through those two slits. Because essentially, those things cannot be particles. And sure enough, the way they behave, not only in the double slit experiment, but in entanglement, which we're getting to, when you say that they're particles, you're going to get things twisted around. Because they can't be particles. But they are. But they're not. They can't be, but they certainly are. No, they're not. Yes, they are. And you just lose your fucking mind. Well, what's going on is, just to do the entanglement experiment with me, you take two electrons, and you make sure they're in the same state. Essentially, you do that with a magnet. You have a magnetic field that's oriented, and you know exactly where the fields of force in that magnetic field are, and the electrons feel it, and they adjust their state to conform with a magnetic field. And if you do it just right, and I won't go into the details on how this is done, but now they share that state. And now you separate them. So now the two electrons are no longer right next to each other as they had been. Now they're further apart. And now you change the state of one of them and very quickly measure the other one. You change the state of one by the application of a magnetic field or just a measuring instrument. It's actually, this is part of the measurement problem, very difficult to talk about, but this experiment has been done numerous times over the past few decades to test to see if light speed is violated, which I find to be a most interesting experiment to try to even imagine what in the world are you trying to do. You're separating two particles that share a state, and you want to change the state of one and see if the other one changes state in no time at all. In other words, it's an instantaneous change, and this has been demonstrated. You can't say it's absolutely conclusive, but the certainty has gone up such that just 4 years ago, the Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to 3 gentlemen who essentially performed this experiment and did it much better than anyone had done before to utilize Bell's theorem, which was written by John Bell back in the 1960s, which changed the perspective on what might be known about quantum phenomena such as entanglement. So now, using very, very advanced technology, as you might guess, these two electrons, we're just going to say they're electrons, they could be photons, because this can be done with photons as well, because it's the quantization of energy. Although you're going to end up tongue-tied again when you say that. Very difficult to talk about this stuff, because there's a paradox that nobody's been able to solve. Not to this moment, except I have. So that's what we're leading up to, is the solution to this paradox, because I solved it. The collapse of the wave function, I know exactly what that is and can explain it to a high school audience. So I should be interviewed, shouldn't I? Kurt Jaimungal. Or even Lex Friedman. Now, I don't care about politics. This is science. I don't care if you're the devil himself, so to speak. Although, of course, I would if it were the devil himself, but that's an old expression. I don't care if it's the devil himself who speaks the truth. The truth is the truth, even if it comes out of the devil's mouth. Well, I would tend to want to argue with that, but that's philosophy, and I don't do that unless I have a lot of beer. Beer is still on my mind, really, rather literally, because I need to take a day off after I've had... I don't get drunk. It's really strange. And I don't gallivant. I don't do any antics. I just drink. And how much? Up to a 6-pack, which is a lot for someone my size, is to drink 6 beers. I won't go into the details of that, but I'm still kind of in a haze. And that's actually, since everything works to my advantage now, even being in this haze, I'm still always thinking of stuff like the family of lines. And really what I do now is I see into imaginary space. So let me tell you the solution to this whole strange situation. You have these two particles. They're now in a shared state. They're sharing the same state. And the idea is to measure one, which fixes its state. And you do have to alter it. So you can't just measure its state, because nothing's going to happen. But so you take a measurement on it, and then very quickly, really faster than the speed of light, you have to instantly measure the other particle to see if it changed without any time lag. Because that's relativity, is there's a time lag with distance. Any distance, there's a time lag between events. But in this case, there's not. And what that means is, when it's seen correctly, as I can do now with the spherical geometry that I discovered and basically invented, but I didn't invent it, Because if I invented it, it would be a product of my mind. No, I invented it in my mind, yes, but I discovered it in the universe. And that's what it has to be, is you discovered it in the universe so that you could invent it in your mind. That's the difference, the technical difference, very important, between a discovery and an invention. You have a mind, so you are an inventor. Every time you have a thought, you invented that thought. That's not the universe. That's your mind. That's not the universe talking. That's your mind talking. But when you make a discovery, you are now able to invent in your mind what the universe says. And if you try to share that with another human being, as I'm doing by writing a paper, you're sharing it with one or more human beings, preferably all other human beings, although that's quite a stretch. You're trying to add to the store of knowledge in general science because you discovered something. And we all know from school that that certainly can be done. Well, a scientist really wants to do that. We want to discover new things because there's always new things to be discovered. Well, that's called the cutting edge of science. And I'm there. That's where I live, is at the cutting edge of science, which is actually quite a broad bow shock. It's not really a cutting edge. And I really don't like that metaphor. It's a Fermi bow shock. You're at the Fermi edge, which is curved. Because a planet, actually a star that's flying through an interstellar medium, has a bow shock. Our solar system has a bow shock wave at the heliopause. And you can look that up. It's very interesting. Our solar system, technically called the heliosphere, is shaped like a tadpole. And it leaves a Kármán wake behind it of mixed gas. Because it's a closed system. The heliosphere is a closed system, and it's formed by the solar wind, which goes out, slows down, and stops. And since there's relative motion between the heliosphere and the interstellar medium, there's a bow shock wave, which has been measured, which is really saying something. We've really gotten quite a bit out into outer space. One of our probes, one of the Pioneer vehicles, is beyond the heliopause now, and it's still signaling back to Earth with something like 5 watts that just travels all that way back to Earth. The signal is picked up, and it's making measurements. It still is. Although it's about to poop out, it's running on some kind of fissionable tablet. It's just incredible what technology has done. Well, it's really affected our minds, collectively and individually, because our minds are so powerful. We're starting to become too self-sufficient, as it says in the Quran. That you humans, this is heaven speaking to earth basically, you humans are entirely too self-sufficient. That's right. That's exactly right. And that's the sin of Satan, is pride. And that's why the earth is grinding to a fiery halt very soon. Could be tomorrow. Everything's just going to go up in flames because your scientists are literally stark raving mad. But it's a lot of fun. And that's the game, which you and I are involved in. We trust that we're not going to become corrupt and evil and just do anything to get money because we need more whores and booze and illicit fornication acts. As the Epstein files show, that's what the mafia governments are all about. That's why they protect themselves so viciously, is because they're all perverts. They're all perverts. All of them are. And they don't really like that to be known because that is something that other people may not trust them, knowing that they're all perverts. All politicians are perverted. They're absolutely depraved people. And you can find that out just by checking their attitude towards money. Now, I'm a saint in that respect. I hate money. So I'm basically all set to go to heaven. Nobody else is. Only I am. So this is megalomania at its worst. So that's what you're dealing with is absolutely, I'm stark raving mad also, but in the best sense. It makes me a better man. And I am better than other men. And that's why I broadcast, is to share myself with you poor slobs. So maybe you might someday achieve my level of happiness. Because happiness loves company. I want you to be beloved by heaven. I want you to go to heaven so that we can have fun forever in the presence of the Lord. Isn't that sweet? And now, of course, I want your money also. You can listen to my tapes, and I need money for that, okay? So hand it over, friend. That's religion. Religion is politics, and that's all it is. Unless it's real religion. Well, that's what I teach, is real religion. Nobody else does. Nobody else does. And only I know science. So that's why I'm writing this paper. But I could also write a Bible and just replace all the holy scriptures on earth with my holy scripture, which then becomes the only holy scripture. You see where this goes? You can't win. This is a loser's game. You're going to die, and then the whole thing is shot anyway. So you're going to die. And nothing matters, because you're going to oblivion, correct? No, you're not. And that can be proved with logic. I have. So you're wrong if you think you're going to oblivion. You're going to pay for every single thing you did every second of your life. You're going to pay for it. So you better start doing things right. Well, how do you do that? By listening to me. When I'm not drinking beer. So you got to make sure you get me at the right time. Okay, so the two entangled particles now share a state which violates light speed. Can that be proved? Yeah. They gave the Nobel Prize for it. Well, the people in Stockholm would know. No, they don't. And they're not sure. And the whole thing is just hype. First of all, is there such a thing as light speed? What does that even mean? It's a speed. A speed? A speed. Well, that means that you're traveling. Oh. So light travels. Does it? How does it do that? How does light travel? How does it do that? You say that you've measured the speed of light. Oh, really? How did you do that? There's a very good Veritasium episode presentation. Veritasium is a very good science channel, in my opinion. And he had one of his adventures was, how do you measure light speed? Because you have to measure it in two directions. You can't measure it in just one direction. And you really have to think about that. And if you can't imagine that being true, watch Veritasium's presentation. So what you're doing in this experiment, for which these three men got the Nobel Prize, which is quite a lucrative prize, okay? It's not a small amount of money. And the three men shared that prize. Because they had done work in this area, essentially on this experiment, which is a physical experiment where you put the two particles in a shared state and separate them, and then measure one, and then measure the other one, but you can't, you see, the word then does not exist here. You measure this one, but at the same moment. Actually, technically, a tempescule, a point in time, which is a 0 point because all points are null. So it's an impossible moment because you're dividing the moments into the tiniest fraction to where it disappears. And there is no moment because it doesn't exist. It only exists relative to other moments. And of course, using the calculus, you can make that as precise as you like. Now you're Satan. Now you're the devil. You're more powerful than God now because of the calculus. Because now the universe runs just as precisely as you like. And that's in every single calculus textbook on page 1. That what you're doing is you're getting the power of God. Because now you can make a measurement as precise as you like. As you like. You're not listening to the universe any longer when it's as precise as you decide. And it's your decision. And you say that you're measuring that particle at an indivisible moment of time. And then what you try to do then, I swear these sirens are just timed to when I'm reaching an intense, concentrative point of communication. Oh, God. It's like the universe is, hey, slow down, shut up. I can't. I'm having too much fun. Yeah, I'm having fun. I hope you're having fun too. So you take this measurement, which you say is a precise moment, but then at the same moment, the exact same moment, you check the other particle to see if it changed at exactly the same moment. How would you set that up? It's really an interesting mind game to try to imagine doing this. Because basically, you're doing something faster than light speed already. You're violating light speed by doing that. You're saying that since you know the speed of light, and now these two particles are perhaps a meter apart. Well, we know how much time it takes to travel that distance as light. Do we? We say we do. It has a fixed speed. But there is definitely a time lag. So that when you take one measurement, the other particle cannot change at the same moment. It has to be at least one tempescule later. And that's a direct contradiction of logic. To even say that, and so the measurement is taken knowing that it doesn't make any sense no matter what you do. And they do it. And the Nobel Prize was given for doing it successfully, where Einstein is dead. That is the Nobel Prize for Physics in 2022, is to kill Einstein, to get rid of that bastard. They're sick of Einstein. They're sick of him. They can't stand relativity anymore because the quantum jump is so exciting, because the government is attracted to that. The government knows it can get some kind of power out of that because Satan has told these scientists. Satan controls governments. Satan does. Right? Satan controls governments. Correct? Is that right? I don't know if you can accept that statement or not, but it's absolutely true. It's provable that your governments are run by a fallen angel. Actually, it gets deep. It's actually a spirit. which is a created being. Satan is a creation of God. The Creator created Satan, and that's what runs your governments, and has since the beginning of human history. And that's enough. We'll be back with more later. Thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned.